"You're not qualified enough for this promotion." Those words didn't just echo in the conference room. They echoed inside my chest, but that moment came later. Before that, there was hope, there was trust. There was the version of me who still believed hard work spoke for itself. I was 27, and for 3 years I had given everything to that company. Late nights, weekends, quiet sacrifices no one saw. I wasn't loud, I wasn't political. I believed results mattered more than relationships. Maybe that was my first mistake. When my manager, Daniel, first mentioned the leadership opening, he smiled at me in a way that made my heart lift. "You've grown a lot here," he said gently. "Keep doing what you're doing." I carried those words home like a fragile gift. My mother was the first person I told. She stirred her tea slowly when I shared the news, her eyes thoughtful. "Promotions aren't just about hard work," she said. "They're about alignment." I didn't fully understand what she meant. I thought she was being cautious the way mothers are. My older brother, Samir, laughed lightly. "Corporate world isn't fair, Aisha. Don't get your hopes too high." I smiled at him. "It's different here," I said. "My boss believes in me." I meant it. At work, I trained new hires. I stayed late to help teammates finish presentations. I rewrote reports so the department would shine. When others argued in meetings, I listened. When someone forgot a detail, I quietly fixed it. Daniel began inviting me to strategy meetings. He would nod when I spoke. Sometimes he even repeated my ideas as if they were his own, but I brushed that off. Maybe that was just leadership style, I told myself. Trust makes you generous with excuses. The week before the promotion decision, something shifted. Conversations paused when I walked into the break room. A colleague avoided eye contact. Daniel became distant, polite, but distant. His emails grew shorter. I noticed it, but I didn't want to interpret it. At home, tension was building too. My father had recently invested money into a small family business my uncle was starting. It wasn't doing well. My parents didn't say it directly, but I could feel the unspoken pressure. If I got promoted, my salary increase would help. One evening, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "If she moves up, we'll finally breathe," my father said quietly. "She deserves it," my mother replied. "She's carried more than we know." Their faith in me felt heavy. Not in a bad way, just heavy. I wasn't just chasing a title anymore. I was carrying expectations. The night before the big meeting, Daniel sent a short message, looking forward to tomorrow. No emoji, no warmth. I read it 3 times. Something in my chest tightened, but I told myself I was overthinking. The next morning, I wore the soft blue blouse my mother bought me when I got my first job. She had said it made me look steady. I wanted to look steady. When I entered the office, the air felt different. My teammates avoided small talk. The conference room door was already open. Daniel stood at the front, hands folded. The leadership team sat along the wall. My heart was beating fast, but I smiled anyway. I had earned this moment. I knew my numbers. I knew my results. I knew how many projects I had quietly saved. As the meeting began, Daniel spoke about growth, vision, and the future of the department. He praised teamwork. He praised collaboration. He didn't say my name, not once. My palms grew cold. Then he cleared his throat. After careful consideration, he said, "We've decided to move forward with someone who has more strategic experience." The room went silent. My ears rang. He looked directly at me. "You're not qualified enough for this promotion," in front of everyone. My team went still. No one defended me. No one questioned him. A few avoided eye contact. One colleague shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, but softly, like glass under pressure. 3 years of loyalty, 3 years of trust, and this was how he chose to say it. Not privately, not respectfully, publicly. I nodded slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. But in that moment, something in me woke up. It wasn't anger. It was awareness. And awareness is much quieter than pain, but far more powerful. I folded my hands in my lap and listened as Daniel continued speaking about future opportunities and areas for development. I realized then that the smile he had given me weeks ago wasn't encouragement. It was a warning. I just hadn't known how to read it yet, and I had no idea that this wasn't only about work. It never really was. The silence after he said it was louder than the words themselves. "You're not qualified enough for this promotion." For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined it. If maybe I had misunderstood, but the way my teammate Sophia avoided my eyes confirmed it. No one speaks when the truth is uncomfortable. Daniel continued talking, but his voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. He began outlining development goals. For me, leadership exposure, executive communication, strategic visibility. Things I had already been doing. Things he had praised me for. I felt heat rise to my face, not embarrassment, betrayal, because this wasn't a performance review. This was a dismissal of 3 years of loyalty. He had never once told me I was underqualified, not in private, not in feedback sessions, not in performance reports. In fact, 2 weeks earlier, he had written in my evaluation, "Aisha consistently exceeds expectations." I knew that sentence by heart. He had said the decision was based on careful consideration, but careful decisions are rarely surprises. I looked around the room again. That's when I saw something that shifted everything. The person sitting 2 seats away, my cousin, Imran. Most people at the office didn't know we were related. He had joined the company 6 months ago. Same department. Different team. He avoided my gaze too. My stomach tightened. Daniel turned toward him, and we're excited to announce that Imran will be stepping into the senior manager role. There it was. Not strategy, not qualifications, alignment. My mother's word echoed in my mind. Alignment. The room clapped politely. Controlled, measured, professional. I felt my heartbeat slow instead of speed up. Strangely, the humiliation didn't break me. It clarified me. Imran stood and thanked the leadership team. His voice was steady, but I noticed the way his fingers gripped the edge of the table. He didn't mention me. He didn't acknowledge that I had trained him when he joined. He didn't mention the projects I had handed over to help him get visibility. He just smiled. And in that smile, I saw something I had missed before. Not confidence, relief. The kind of relief someone feels when a secret holds. Daniel asked if anyone had questions. No one spoke. I felt something rise inside me, not rage, not desperation. Truth, I stood up slowly. My chair made a soft sound against the floor. Every head turned. Daniel looked mildly surprised. "Yes, Aisha." My hands didn't shake. That surprised me too. I opened my laptop. For 3 years I had documented everything. Not because I was suspicious, because I was organized. I tracked project ownership, revenue growth, client retention numbers. I believed in transparency. The screen reflected in Daniel's glasses as I projected it onto the wall. Charts, timelines, emails, evidence. I just want clarity. I said calmly. My voice sounded different, steadier, lower. Because last week, my evaluation stated I exceeded expectations in strategic planning, team leadership, and execution. The room shifted. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Performance reviews are only one factor. I nodded gently, of course. That's why I also brought the department growth report. Slide after slide, I showed the results of initiatives I had led. Revenue increases, client renewals. Efficiency improvements, no accusations, just facts. I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I was trying to protect my dignity. Finally, I closed my laptop halfway and looked directly at Daniel. Then I said the 5 words that changed everything. I deserve honest feedback, privately, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. The room felt different after that. It wasn't explosive. It was uncomfortable. because honesty makes people face themselves. Daniel cleared his throat. We can schedule a one to discuss your growth areas. I held his gaze for a moment longer. I would appreciate that. Then I sat down. No one clapped, no one defended me, but something invisible had shifted. The narrative wasn't simple anymore. It wasn't she wasn't qualified. It was why wasn't she told. After the meeting ended, people filed out quietly. Sophia squeezed my shoulder on her way past. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? I wanted to ask, for knowing. For staying silent. Imran avoided me completely. That hurt more than Daniel's words. Family is supposed to be honest with you. At home that evening, my father asked carefully, how did it go? I looked at him for a long second. I saw hope in his eyes. I saw expectation. I saw financial relief he hadn't allowed himself to feel yet. They chose someone else. I said softly. His shoulders dropped slightly, just slightly, but I saw it. My mother didn't speak. She just watched me closely. And for the first time, I didn't rush to reassure anyone. I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't okay, but it wasn't devastating either. It was revealing. That night, I lay awake replaying everything, the smile, the distance, the silence in the room, and a quiet realization settled over me. This wasn't just about qualifications. It was about family alliances, private conversations, decisions made long before the meeting began. I had trusted both my boss and my cousin, one for leadership, one for blood, and neither had given me the courtesy of honesty. The pain wasn't sharp, it was slow, but something inside me had changed, not my ambition, not my capability, my boundaries, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. The days after the meeting were quieter than I expected. No confrontation, no apology, no explanation, just normalcy. And sometimes normalcy is the most dishonest thing of all. Daniel scheduled our one 3 days later. The delay told me something before he even spoke. If someone truly values you, they don't postpone clarity. When I walked into his office, he smiled the same practiced, gentle smile. Aisha, I hope you know this decision wasn't personal. That sentence almost made me laugh, because decisions like that are never about spreadsheets alone. They are about relationships, access, proximity. I understand. I said calmly, and I did. I understood that he had already made up his mind weeks ago. He talked about executive presence, about visibility at the right tables, about how Imran had strong stakeholder alignment again. I nodded, I took notes. I didn't defend myself this time, not because I agreed, but because I was observing. There is power in watching people explain themselves. He never once mentioned qualifications again. He never addressed the contradiction between my evaluation and his public statement, and that silence spoke louder than anything else. At work, I noticed subtle shifts. Emails I used to be copied on stopped including me. Strategy meetings happened without my calendar invite. Imran now led projects I had designed. He was careful around me, polite, almost overly so. One afternoon, we ended up alone in the break room. He poured coffee without looking at me. I didn't know how it would be announced. He said quietly. It wasn't an apology. It was self-protection. I studied him for a moment. We had grown up attending the same family weddings. Shared childhood jokes. He used to call me for advice before his interviews. I trained you. I said softly. Not accusing, just factual. He swallowed. It wasn't my decision. No, it wasn't, but silence had been. That evening, my mother knocked gently on my bedroom door. You've been very quiet, she said. I'm thinking. I replied. She sat beside me. Your uncle called today. That made my chest tighten. About the promotion. She nodded slowly. He mentioned that Imran has been under a lot of pressure. Your uncle invested heavily in helping him secure this role. There it was. The missing piece, investment. Suddenly everything aligned, but not in the way Daniel had meant. My father's struggling business. My uncle's financial risk. Imran's sudden hiring 6 months ago. Private dinners I wasn't invited to. I wasn't underqualified. I was inconvenient. Family had positioned him carefully, and I had unknowingly prepared the ground. The realization didn't make me angry. It made me still. I thought about every late night I had stayed to polish presentations, some of which Imran later presented to leadership. I remembered recommending him for cross-department exposure. I had been generous, and generosity without boundaries becomes exploitation. That night, I sat alone in the living room long after everyone slept. I replayed moments from the past year. The subtle exclusion from certain conversations. The way my uncle once asked, "Would you be comfortable supporting Imran's growth?" The way Daniel had suddenly begun praising Imran's fresh perspective. I hadn't seen it because I trusted both systems, family and workplace, to be separate. They weren't, and the betrayal wasn't loud. It was coordinated, but something inside me surprised me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to expose anyone. What I wanted was distance, clarity, control over my own narrative. The next morning at work, I began doing something different. I stopped overextending. I completed my responsibilities precisely, professionally, but I no longer volunteered for invisible labor. I documented conversations. I sent follow-up emails summarizing decisions, calmly, politely, strategically. People notice when your energy shifts. Sophia asked me one day, "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said honestly. I'm learning, and I was. I was learning that being kind doesn't mean being available for manipulation. That loyalty should not require self-erasure. That silence can either protect you or diminish you, depending on how you use it. Weeks passed. Imran began struggling in meetings, strategic questions he wasn't prepared for. Clients asking about details only I fully understood. I never interrupted. I never corrected him publicly, but when leadership asked for clarification, I answered directly, without softness, without apology. Truth doesn't need decoration. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by my desk. "We may need your support on the upcoming expansion proposal," he said carefully. I looked up at him. 3 months ago, I would have felt flattered. Now, I felt measured, of course. I replied, "I'd be happy to support within my defined role." Defined role. He hesitated slightly at that phrase. Good, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was choosing how I would participate. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something unfamiliar, peace, not because justice had been served, not because anyone apologized, but because I finally understood. The promotion had revealed more than favoritism. It revealed where I stood in the company, in my family, and within myself, and once you see clearly, you stop begging for visibility. You start building your own light. I didn't know yet what that would look like, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never again confuse silence with safety, and I would never again offer loyalty without boundaries. 3 months after the meeting, I stopped waiting. Not for recognition, not for apology, not for fairness. Waiting keeps you emotionally tied to a door that may never open. Instead, I began building my own. The expansion proposal Daniel had mentioned became my turning point. I worked on it with precision, not overextending, not over-delivering, just delivering exactly what was required. For the first time, I let the gaps show. When Imran overlooked a risk analysis, I didn't quietly fix it at midnight. I documented it. I sent it back with notes, professionally, neutrally. Please review Section 3 for financial impact alignment. No emotion. No rescue. In meetings, I spoke only when necessary, and when I did, I was direct. Clear, brief, something unexpected happened. People started listening differently, not because I was louder, because I was no longer eager. Confidence without need feels different in a room. One afternoon, a senior executive, someone outside our department, approached me after a cross-team session. "You have a strong strategic lens," she said thoughtfully. "Have you ever considered moving into corporate development?" The question lingered long after she walked away. That night, I opened my laptop not to prove anything, not to prepare slides for someone else, but to update my resume. For the first time, I listed my achievements without shrinking them. Led revenue growth by 18%, designed retention framework. Mentored 5 new hires. I realized something important as I typed. I had been qualified all along. I had just been seeking validation from the wrong table. 2 weeks later, I applied quietly to an internal role in corporate development. A different department, a different reporting line. No family ties, no shared dinners, no alignment politics. When HR called me for an interview, I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my colleagues. Some journeys deserve privacy. The interview felt different from the promotion meeting months earlier. There were no rehearsed smiles, no vague language about visibility. They asked about outcomes, decision making, leadership under pressure. I answered calmly, not to impress, just to explain. A week later, I received the offer, higher salary, broader scope, direct exposure to executive strategy. I sat alone in my apartment when I read the email. And I didn't cry. I smiled softly because this victory didn't feel loud. It felt earned. When I told my parents, my father looked confused at first. "You're leaving your department?" he asked. Yes, he hesitated. What about family harmony? There it was again. The unspoken expectation that I protect everyone else's comfort. "I'm not leaving the family," I said gently. "I'm just choosing growth." My mother watched me carefully, then nodded. "You look lighter," she said. And I was. At work, I scheduled a meeting with Daniel. When I told him about the transfer, his eyebrows lifted. "We had plans for you here," he said. I held his gaze calmly, with respect. I wasn't aware of them. A brief silence filled the space. He cleared his throat. "You've matured a lot these past few months." I almost smiled. No, I had awakened. On my last day in the department, I packed my desk quietly. Sophia hugged me tightly. "You deserved better," she whispered. I shook my head gently. I deserved clarity. I replied, and I found it. Imran approached me near the elevators. "I never meant for things to get complicated," he said. I studied him for a long moment. "I know," I answered honestly. "But silence has consequences, and not harsh, not bitter, just true." Weeks passed in my new role, and something inside me settled. No one treated me like a supporting character. No one positioned me quietly behind someone else. My ideas were debated, challenged, refined, not appropriated. One evening, after a long strategy session, I walked out of the building and felt the cool air against my face. I thought about the day Daniel had said I wasn't qualified. Back then, those words had felt like a verdict. Now they felt like redirection. If he had chosen me, I might have stayed loyal, overextended, slowly shrinking myself to protect comfort. Rejection had given me perspective, and perspective had given me boundaries. Months later, I heard through office whispers that the expansion project had struggled under inconsistent leadership, that executive teams were asking harder questions. That alignment was no longer enough. Natural consequences don't need witnesses. They unfold quietly. One afternoon, as I finalized a major acquisition model with my new team, the senior executive who had first approached me smiled across the table. "You're exactly where you belong," she said, and for the first time I believed it without needing proof. I wasn't promoted by Daniel. I promoted myself, not with revenge, not with exposure, but with self-respect. Here's what I learned: when someone says you're not qualified, don't rush to prove them wrong. First, ask yourself, are they truly measuring you or protecting their own interests? Boundaries are not walls. They are doors you control. And sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is not confrontation. It is elevation, quiet, steady, unapologetic elevation. I walked into that conference room months ago believing trust was enough. I walk forward now knowing something greater. Trust must be paired with self-respect, and once you learn that, no one else gets to decide your worth again.